There is a hidden value in being a commodity. And that's because it's a commodity because everybody needs it. It's not optional not to buy it. So think about, okay, if everybody has to have this, my thought leadership should be around what are the trends that are going to impact this? How is this going to change? How is AI going to affect the thing that I mean, AI affects everything. But thinking about the fact that if everybody has to buy this, then being at the forefront of what's next is your advantage.
Hello, and welcome to the Marketing Blender Show. I'm Dacia.
And I'm Daisy.
Now, today we are talking about how to win in a commoditized market. Wah, wah. This is painful. If you are in a space where it feels like the only thing anybody cares about is price, this episode is for you because we have done a lot of work and you don't have to just settle for this and have a price only business model. There are so many things where you can win, and we want to uncover those for you today.
All right, B2B commoditized sellers. Now, sometimes it's true. They really are selling the same thing as everybody else is.
100%.
Sometimes it's not true, and their customers don't know it. Sometimes it's not true, and they don't know it.
Yeah.
So sometimes you don't actually understand what's truly different about your business, how you deliver even the products that you're offering, unless you do a deeper dive. So we're going to go through a set of commoditized B2B companies. I'll give you some examples from my background working with organizations like this. So first one is industrial and manufacturing, fasteners and hardware. This is like the ultimate widget. It's literally nuts, bolts, screws, washers, things like that. Seems like it couldn't get any more commoditized than that. However, there are still ways to differentiate. With a hardware provider that actually they did fasteners for aerospace, they had some very specific differentiators. It wasn't the ones that they thought. They thought being a family-owned business made them different. Their buyers do not care about that. But what did make them different was their 40,000-foot warehouse that made them a stocking vendor. So they actually had the vast inventory. They could get their customers what was ordered faster than their competition. So that was their differentiation. It wasn't any of the things they thought it was about their brand, but it was definitely that piece that mattered most to the buyers that they were selling to.
Yeah.
Next one is, IT, MSPs. This is one of the most difficult places to differentiate.
Yes.
First, because your customers don't understand what you're selling. If you're selling to small businesses, which most of the IT providers that we've worked with are, they know it's some computer stuff. They know that they should be scared of hacking and data breaches and their servers going down, but they don't understand how things work. So it's very difficult to differentiate when you're selling something your customers don't even understand. However, they do understand things like relationship. They do understand things like speed of response when something goes wrong. So there are things that you can communicate around, including your company values, that help your customers feel like, oh, this is going to be different than if I work with a company where I talk to a different person every time I call. No one's accountable. I think I entered a service ticket, but I don't know what's happening with it. So there are ways you can still differentiate around that.
And specialization in this is an interesting differentiator because just keeping it so simple, when you're in a complicated environment like this with people that don't understand every detail of what you need to accomplish for them, when you've gotten so good at using the words that make sense for that industry, make sense for that type of client, make sense for their level of understanding, that is a massive differentiator to be like, these guys just get it. Like, they just make it easy. It's not scary. It's not overwhelming. And I can define value even if I can't define what you're delivering.
Right. And I've seen that with MSPs that specifically just work with dentists.
Yes.
That's all that they do.
Great example.
Or law offices.
Yes.
And that's the only thing that they do. So there are definitely ways to niche down with that as well.
Agreed.
My next one is going to be software development. Oh my goodness. So difficult to differentiate in this space. It seems like it would not be the case because, there's so much consulting that goes into it. It seems like it's such a specialized area. There are software development firms on every corner and they all sound exactly the same. So, and this includes the ones that are like, oh, we use a hybrid model.
Yes.
Okay,
Offshore,
offshore,
nearshore,
yeah.
blah,
Not a
blah, blah,
differentiator
blah. Not a
anymore. People
differentiator.
have figured out that they can get stuff cheaper if they have some of it done offshore, and they get good communication if they have project management done onshore.
Oh my goodness.
Not a differentiator anymore.
No.
So for some software developers that I've worked with, the differentiation is really around specializing, again, in specific customer types. So you can't be everything to everyone. I know your team is smart and they can do all the different code on all the different platforms and could potentially build anything for anyone, but anything for anyone is not a position and it's not a differentiator. So sometimes it comes down to the discovery process. Like if you can articulate and show up front that your discovery process is going to be more in-depth.
Game changer.
It is going to make sure that you are building the thing that does what they really want, even if they don't know how to articulate it or say, from top to bottom, I know everything I want. If you're able to come back and push back and say, hey, actually, if you want to do that in an easier way, or if you want to fulfill the intent of what you're asking for, even if it looks different than what you had in your mind, we have a better option for you.
Yeah.
So, and sometimes it's about the payment model. So maybe it's not, they have to own the software in order to have access to it, or maybe it's how it's structured so there's shared risk. So there are lots of things that you can do throughout that sales journey that make it a different experience than just, I picked this one because they were in the top 3 in Google Ads.
This is one of those where beware of the sacred cows. How you've always done it, how the industry's always done it, what you think is special. Woof. I mean, we are in a rapid pace of change where customized software solutions are no longer special. And even 5 years ago, they were like developing something unique for your company. And now it is such an automatic, maybe we should build technology for this, or maybe we should customize something, that it's not enough to be good in this.
And maybe we should just use AI.
Let's go.
Welcome to that.
I know, exactly.
All right. Professional services is up next. Staffing and recruiting. Again, there is one on every corner. Competition is insane. I used to work in HR, so I got to gatekeep against all of the recruiting and staffing agencies that would come by and, give me donuts and all that good stuff every week. Guess what? Didn't mean that they got chosen. So if you're looking at specialization in staffing and recruiting, obviously niche down and actually build out real specialization, real differentiation. This might look like the breadth of your network. It might look like what the assessments that you actually do, how you ensure right fit. It may have to do with the guarantees you have around retention. Yeah. So can you guarantee that this person will stay at this job X amount of time, and if not, you're going to replace them? What are guarantees that you're actually going to be different than the people that you're competing against? And then what proprietary insights can you develop from the experience that you do have in your specialization that you can then demonstrate to your target market, to your clientele, that you have insights that they can't get elsewhere? Because the problem that people are trying to solve with staffing and recruiting is I need to find the right people. I need to get them to stay. And that's hard for almost every business. If you can show ways that they can help address that, even before they buy from you, you're strongly differentiated.
In other professional services, think finance, think investing, think exit, think lending, think, law, support, operations, business consultants. I mean, we could go on and on and on. One of the things I find is that because they know the size of the problem is so huge, they just take it for granted that everyone needs them. It doesn't matter if the size of the market problem is so big that every single provider could be successful. The noise around your service and how much outreach, like most of us can't even answer our phones anymore, or, and half of my spammy texts are from professional service companies and consultants and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's all sounding commoditized. Doesn't matter if it does. So there's so much noise that people just automatically assume, these companies automatically assume, well, everybody struggles with this, or 90% of companies struggle with X, Y, and Z. We're just going to land business. And they overemphasize that and then just smush their differentiation.
Yes. And all business owners have this problem. And why should they choose you?
Exactly.
Again, and
commoditized.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's the issue.
I feel like they don't realize they're in a commoditized market, this group.
Sometimes that's true. Next one I wanted to talk about just briefly is logistics and supply chain. So let's consider fleet management trucking. everybody hates paying freight. It's the one thing that so many companies are like, I will do anything in my power to pay the least amount possible. It shouldn't cost me 50% of the cost of the item itself to ship it. Like, everybody resents freight. So it's easy to think, well, they're just going to go with whatever's cheapest. But actually, there are other things that matter. Is the thing actually getting to where it's supposed to be at the time that I was told that it would? Am I able to, customize my shipping options? So for organizations in this space that are using technology in a smart way, there's tons of Internet of Things that sensors integration that you can do in order to make sure that you're reducing their additional risks. They know exactly where their items are at all times. Amazon is, of course, the best at this. I mean, that you can know exactly where your stuff is at any time. It doesn't have to be at that level, but thinking about how do I reduce the risk to my customer and their fear and concern over, hey, I'm trying to get this shipped because I've made a promise to the person at the other end. You need to make sure that what your differentiation stands around is not that lowest cost, but easiest to get it done, fastest. They feel confident that they're getting a good rate, and then they know for sure that it's going to get where you said it would, you said it would, and not be broken in the process. So anything that you can build around that is going to be helpful.
Yeah.
And then I think final one before we move on is, we're just going to say printing.
And guess what? Customer service is not a differentiator. If you're a printer, not a differentiator, because everyone says it.
So it's what can you prove before the invoice. So sometimes this is about the ordering process itself. So do you have a portal that actually makes it intuitive for people to move through the process? Do you have it differentiated so people can self-select based on their level of experience? You want to have a different experience for a designer than you do for a business owner who just needs some flyers done. So thinking about how am I showcasing, our best work, impact for customers, and then creating a brand experience where people are like, oh, that was super easy. I'm going to always order from these people. Yeah. So it's not necessarily the customer service in the way that you're thinking about it, but it is brand experience. So think brand experience first, and then build your customer service to deliver the correct brand experience.
At the Marketing Blender, we have fractional CMOs and outsourced marketing teams to drive your success. The two most common problems that we are approached about is how do we break revenue plateaus and accelerate success, or how do we attribute marketing to revenue impact? And the answer is that we build a system, because your marketing should be driving revenue, it should be driving your reputation, and it should be driving resilience. If you want to learn more, check out themarketingblender.com. Basically, there's a reason why these markets, no matter how different they are getting commoditized, right? So minimal differentiation is what we've been discussing. And oftentimes it's a misunderstanding of what real differentiation actually is. So a gap between what the customer might value versus what you are good at or what you think they should value can be really different. Obviously, price-driven purchasing. This can be because of that differentiation component. It also can be because there is very little ability to control cost. And so if it is market fluctuations, and there are organizations and industries like that are at the sway of what's happening around them, but then it becomes the only thing anyone's talking about and nobody's zooming out. And then finally, a lack of brand loyalty. And you're going to hear us talk a lot about this. When you're in a commoditized market, you have got to find a way to make that purchase matter, right? So they've got to buy it anyways. They've got to buy it from somebody. Why not allow that purchase to be a scenario where they are glad it's you? They are glad that they get to support your business. And whether it's a values alignment, or you just reduce friction for them, or you get them, or you specialize, or you deploy technology. And we've gone through so many examples. We'll continue to go through more. This one is so huge. Make a commoditized purchase matter, because you can and you should, especially since it's such a huge, huge part of their everyday businesses.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about the fact that things can be commoditized in different ways for different reasons.
Yeah.
So you had some notes here around how revenue flows through the business. You've got some commoditized people that are reselling something, and that's one of the reasons that they're being commoditized. And then you've got a different category where it is their own product or service, but they're still facing the same issue.
Yeah, exactly. And for me, it's less about what environment and more about be clear on who you're selling to, because that's a different messaging strategy, right? So if revenue is flowing through a distributor and they have multiple providers because of supply and demand and, et cetera, your messaging is not necessarily around your product, even though I find so frequently, even for a specified or engineered product, the thing that is the same, or your company is using the same equipment, they are saying over and over and over, quality, 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 quality. No, it has to be the same. There are standards or specifications or market expectations. You don't get to talk about quality. Everyone is required to have that level of quality. So I'm blown away by this. But how do you make your reseller or your distributor more successful? So then your differentiation in your messaging, because revenue's flowing through the wholesaler or the distributor, how do you strengthen their business? And there's so many things left on the table. A lot of times tribal knowledge or your how, like the thing that you're just naturally good at, can actually be used to help strengthen and for you to become a preferred provider for them. And then, of course, like we're going to switch over to the other example is when you're selling directly to the purchasers, the purchasing agents. Now, you were a purchasing agent, so I'm not going to bother expounding on what they care about. Why don't we just ask a former purchasing agent, what do purchasing agents care about?
So if you're being commoditized, your number one enemy in your mind is probably the procurement department, because purchasing agents are famous for just being all about price. But guess what? They're actually not. So yes, before I started working in marketing 17 years ago, I spent 6 years in purchasing. So I've been on this side of the desk, and I understand a lot of the categories and factors that purchasing agents actually think about beyond price. So I'm going to share those with you. And as I do, think about which areas you can specialize around. Remember, specializing in the person that you're selling to and what they care about. So number one is time it takes to get a quote. Guess what? If purchasing agents really are getting 3 quotes for everything, they're going to be happiest with the people that get them those quotes the fastest, especially if they've been told that there's a quick turn needed on something and they're getting pressure. Oh, somebody didn't put in this requisition until a week before they needed it. Being fast, consistently fast with your quote responses is important. And then there's in-stock availability. So not just how fast can I get a quote back, but is this somewhere regionally close to me so that when I order it, it's not going to take forever to get here. And I am working with manufacturers right now who have this top of mind and are starting to build out warehouses across the country, for that 3PL advantage that they have, where they can say, we can pick and pack it. If you order by noon today, it'll be on a truck tomorrow. And because it's not across the country, it's going to get you to you days faster. And then there's lead time, which is, especially in manufacturing, or if you're distributing something that's being shipped in from overseas, lead time is a big deal. And you have to be telling the truth about lead time, by the way. You can't just say, oh, we'll have it in 6 weeks when you know it's going to be 10 weeks. So lead time is important. And then, of course, on-time delivery. So not just, are you telling me you can get it within this period of time, but are you reliably and consistently following through on that? So proven on-time delivery, track record for on-time delivery, that buys you some grace for those times when supply chain is messed up and you can't necessarily get everything on time, but being the vendor that's most reliable is going to be very helpful. Next is the ability to expedite. So if the purchasing agent calls you and says, hey, would it be possible to get this a week earlier? I'm willing to pay extra. If you have the ability to say yes to that, that's going to put you on the preferred vendor list. Next, there's payment terms.
Yep.
And this includes things like early discounts and, bulk pricing, things like that. If there are ways that you can accommodate your purchasing departments with special terms, that makes them look really good. So that's something that they like to be able to take to their superiors. Next one is freight terms. We mentioned earlier, everybody hates paying for freight. So if there are ways that you can structure your freight terms to be more advantageous to the people that you're selling to, they're going to love you for that. Next is QC. So quality, is a buzzword for people, but in some industries, they're literally they're QCing everything, and the number of rejects is going to affect your vendor status with them, especially in aerospace, medical, any highly regulated industries. there's expected to be some degree of failure rate, but yours needs to be really, really low, and you need to be tracking that in your plant or in your distribution center. Sometimes it's subcontractor category. So veteran-owned business, women-owned business, minority-owned business. This might be a factor, and you should ask, is this something that's coming into play? Especially for larger companies, they may have specific categories of vendors they're looking to work with. Then there's flexibility in resolving AP issues. And I can speak to this one because this was the bane of my existence, which was reconciling invoices, because the accounts payable department where I worked loved to short pay their vendors. And the stupidest thing was sometimes it would just be like $1. Oh, they don't agree with how you calculated tax on that. So they short paid it by $1. And we would end up getting our accounts with our vendors shut down over $1 of unpaid invoice. Obviously, that's not good for anyone. So if you have the awareness to say, okay, you know what, if this is something small that we can make an adjustment for, I'm not saying let your customers abuse you on this, but seriously, purchasing agents hate having to fight with AP over this kind of stupid stuff. So please just learn some flexibility in that area, because they're not trying to do this to you. It's the accounting department. It has nothing to do with your relationship with purchasing. Sourcing practices, again, the larger the organization, the more likely they're going to have specific sustainability or other, ethical purchasing regulations that they're trying to follow. So understanding what that is and then making sure that you can demonstrate that in your own supply chain, your own practices is important. Sometimes purchasing agents are looking to consolidate supply chain. So if you're able to sell them more of the stuff that they need so that it's simpler for them to manage their vendor portfolio, that can be an advantage. On the opposite side, sometimes they need to diversify. So if you're able to sell them, different things that they are already getting from someone else, but they need to have you as a backup, be the backup. That just gives you the in so that you can become the preferred provider over time. And then finally, pricing protection. So what are the ways that you can look at, moderating the fluctuations, your own raw material costs or things like that, where you're working with the purchasing department to help protect them from some of that. Creating a win-win, obviously, but showing that you're thinking about how market trends and how the economy and how raw material prices are going to impact them, and creating a plan together in advance.
I love it. So what Daisy just shared with you is a toolkit of different levers that a purchasing agent could use in order to be more effective at their job as an advocate for their organization. Put this to use. And so let me unpack a couple different ways. Can you imagine doing a whiteboard session where you're looking at all of these different components and saying, where can we win? Where can we strengthen? And what can we turn into a kit, a positioning strategy? So that's one thing where you're doing it really intentionally. But then there's other things, right? So there's components where maybe you have the best information or the best communication systems. That's a vertical, that some of the things that she just mentioned fall into. Another one is technology. Can you build a dashboard? Can you share something that gives information faster or through a technology system that is more effective or cuts friction and frustration out of their job? Another one is flexibility, right? And so stop saying that purchasing agents only care about price, because that is a very overly simplified version, because there is a lot of nuance and complexities and stress in their day-to-day jobs that you can actually support. And guess what? That messaging rolls up top too. So when you've got multiple buyer personas, where maybe you've got a leadership buyer persona and a purchasing agent buyer persona, now you have a holistic point of view around your position despite having a commoditized product. So there's so much you can use. But I got to say, we're about to shift into something, and I'm going to toot my own horn for a second on how disciplined I'm being around the one thing, in addition to all of this, that commoditized companies or companies in commoditized markets need to get good at. Get good at branding. Get good at branding tomorrow, yesterday, today, immediately, at stories, at positioning. Be likable. I mean, this one, so it's everything we've talked about rolled up into what is your package? What do you stand for? I am amazed that they will literally commoditize their organization in parallel to what's happening to their product and offerings. And I'm like, stop the madness. We give you permission to go top of funnel and be the just damn most likable company out there in your market. And it's amazing what creativity, innovation, and operational excellence come out of a determination to be the best. And even if it starts with a perception standpoint, there is a lot of really exciting decisions that come out of what you decide when you're like, this is what our brand stands for, regardless of what our product is in the market.
That's true. And it is shocking how often you see people in commoditized markets, and when they think about what should our messaging be, what should our marketing look like, they will literally go look at their competitors and say, well, I guess that's what works. No.
They're blue. We're going to do a rebranding. They're blue. Let's be blue and green.
No,
oh my God.
please stop.
That's not branding. Please stop. Exactly. So, and also values. Values. Do we believe in the same thing that our customers believe in? Do we fight against the same thing our customers believe in? Do we treat people, philosophically, are there things and traits that we embody and operationalize in that can be trustworthy? And ironically, they roll back exactly to the dozens of levers that are possible. So this one's just such a big deal for me. And I just hate when organizations leave their character and their humanity on the table when it's the thing that, number one, would have built a strong culture. Number two would have built legacy. Number three would have built more profit. Number four would have increased their valuation. And number five would have made them more differentiated. Just saying. And
we've talked in previous episodes about the fact that the buying cohort is getting younger.
Yeah.
And the younger they go, the more they care about brand. They buy from brands.
It's not relationship. Yes.
But it is brand, and it is, even in commoditized market, they're buying the same thing they could get somewhere else from a specific company because of the brand. So exactly. Invest in brand. It's going to be good for you now, and it's going to be good for you in the future. The next thing is, following on from brand experience. So take the word customer service, scrub it out of your brain, and replace it with brand experience and customer experience. So customer service is often, oh, well, you know what? If something goes wrong, we make it right. Why are things going wrong?
Yes.
Like people tell me they want to use that as their positioning. Oh, really? The first thing you want to tell people is when we mess up, we'll do better?
Yes.
That's, you know what? Fine that can be true, but don't lead with that. No, you should be setting people up to expect excellence so that when they call customer service, they're expecting to have a good customer experience. They're like, oh, I get to call these people and I know I'm going to have X, Y, Z. I'll feel this. I'll think this. This will be resolved. I'll, get whatever I need because that's the experience that they're having.
Absolutely. So the next one in a commoditized market that you can deploy for differentiation is thought leadership. But let me be clear about what thought leadership is. It's not about talking about yourself or why you're better, different, faster, cheaper, whatever. It is about talking about what's happening in the market, the big trends, the pressures, the stressors, the aha moments, where you see things are going. Capitalize on the truly intentional thinking that you probably do as a leadership team all the time about your market, and talk to the market about the market. So thought leadership is obviously not marketing comparisons, but really grabbing something that makes people go, oh my gosh, I haven't thought about it that way before. Or, like, am I seeing that? And just where it's really engaging critical thinking. Like, I love seeing this, but it usually has to challenge a CEO or senior leadership, different leaders, to actually be social CEOs or social leaders. And so there's a lot of fear that can come along with this if you're doing it well.
And one thing I would say here is there is a hidden value in being a commodity. And that's because it's a commodity because everybody needs it. It's not optional not to buy it. So Think about, okay, if everybody has to have this, my thought leadership should be around what are the trends that are going to impact this? How is this going to change? How is AI going to affect the thing that AI affects everything. But thinking about the fact that if everybody has to buy this, then being at the forefront of what's next is your advantage.
I can't bring up examples around this one company, right? Obviously, but I want to mention a paradigm of one of our clients that is so focused on this, and you just nailed it. So they're in infrastructure, and every product they make is commoditized by definition. So there's nothing they can do to be different from what they deliver. And I have never, ever in almost 9 years of working with them, ever heard them talk about the commoditization in their industry. Now, I know this industry really good. I hear all of their competitors and even adjacents talk about it, lament it, but it's literally like they don't believe that because they are so focused on value creation, problem solving on behalf of their customers and their partners in what the future of the industry looks like, that it is astonishing. I mean, you would almost think they're in a completely indifferent, business universe compared to the entire rest of their market. And it is so encouraging and exciting to be around it, but it's also like this weird restraint on what their competitors believe about what's possible. And you are exactly right. They see it as a complete benefit because it frees them up to see all of the other places that they can actually step into and drive the future. And that's real thought leadership. It's so fun. It's so fun.
That is actual innovation.
Exactly.
I think our next one is around customization. And this is one that has a caution built into it. So if you have a way to create a more customized experience, that can be excellent. If you're talking about customizing the thing you deliver or how you deliver it, focus on how you can do that in a way that's repeatable. So those two things are not actually diametrically opposed. Something can be a customized experience or solution and still be something that you can say, and we can deploy it to this customer and this customer and this customer and this customer. So be looking for those ways that you can create a different experience, but one that you can use over and over and over.
Yeah. Another one we love to look for is using data insights to drive increased return on investment for your customers. So think about marketing insights. I know that sounds crazy, but this is really about market trends. What are the things that you're seeing that you can recirculate into your messaging or into your customer relationships? Another one is finance. Are there things that you can communicate, that you could build dashboards around? Same thing around operations, delivery, speed, any of these type of things. Are there ways that you can create, and I especially love data visualization in this scenario, where part of the customer experience becomes providing data and becomes providing data in a way that is very easy to adopt, to understand, and that strengthens your customer.
Our final one in this section is around taking your organization's natural strengths and making that more available to your customer.
Yeah.
So there may be things that you do internally, operationally, that your customers don't care about. It's how the sausage is made, nobody cares. But sometimes there are pieces of that, technology, dashboards, trainings, that if you made those available to your customers, they would find a lot of value in it.
Yes.
So think about the things that you already have on hand that are part of why your business runs as well as it does. And think about what you can externalize so that you're delivering value.
I love this one. It can create a real community, and it actually can bridge loyalty as well. And we mentioned earlier, it's one of the problems of a commoditized market is people just assume they'll never get loyalty, and it's not necessarily true. Okay, so what are the final, as we wrap up, what are some of the must-haves? Like, just to recap, because we went through a lot where it's like, okay, guys,
Yes.
Here's what's on the table. You must think about this.
So positioning is number one.
Yeah.
And what are you being compared to? And in the commoditized market, people are like, we're being compared to everybody. No, you're not. There's always specific things that you're being compared on. And when you understand what your starting place is on that, you can influence and achieve a different position that gives you more strength in your market. And then you can look at, okay, what's the differentiation? So what am I being compared to, and what's the degree of differentiation I have from that, those top 2 or 3 competitors, so that you're understanding the reason that people should choose you instead.
Absolutely. In a commoditized market, you also must be better than your competitors at tactics. And when I'm saying tactics, I mean customer experience. So all the touch points, all the ways that you engage. And then I'm also thinking marketing tactics. What do you stand for? How are you stewarding your reputation and the context in which they believe and make decisions around you?
I would say on tactics as well. Sometimes it's being better at Google Ads. Sometimes it's being better at SEO. Look for the things that your competitors are missing. Because guess what? In the commoditized market, it's easy for people to fall into the rut of, oh, we're just going to keep doing things the way we have, but we're going to do more of it. We're going to do it faster. We're going to hire more salespeople. And they're missing the things that are on the marketing side.
It's funny, in the list that you went through in the beginning, not all of them, but I would say a good 50% of them are some of our lowest cost marketing environments where the ROI is astonishing because nobody's doing anything. Now, not all of them. There were a couple competitive ones we mentioned, but holy cow, low-lying fruit. Yes.
For sure.
Yes.
And then think about being the first in every category of marketing tools, marketing technology, platforms, automation, because your competitors are going to be slower than you at picking up on these things. So there's often a window, sometimes it's a few months, sometimes it's a couple of years, where if you're the first one to jump on that new way to reach your customers, you're going to have a competitive advantage that really helps you establish yourself as the preferred provider, as the known name, as the trusted name, and help safeguard you from customer churn as well.
Exactly. And as a wrap up, the one final thing you must do in a commoditized market is just stop. Stop with the apples to apples comparison. Stop with saying we have better customer service than everybody else. Stop with and I'm sorry this is going to offend you, but I don't care, the lazy things where we just keep saying the same thing over and over, and we just keep looking at the competitors and saying the same thing they are over and over and over, and stop insisting and complaining that price is the only thing that matters. So we love you. This is why we did this for you, because we see a lot of this, but a paradigm shift, even just a teeny little one, will open up so many horizons of possibility and profitability, despite being in a commoditized market, that yes, we will expect a thank you from you later. So that's it, you guys. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next week. Onward and upward.